What's going on, guys, and welcome back to F123 for My Team Career Mode Season 1, round number 14, the Mexican Grand Prix. Our first time racing at Mexico in this game, so let's see how this one goes. First of all, I have to set a rival. The only options I have are the two Red Bull drivers, so I'm going to go for Perez because, well, generally he's doing a lot worse than Verstappen is this season. Then I have to put a new MGU-H on the car because that one, well, all four, I think four, are really worn out, so we're going to have to take a grid penalty for this race. We have our regulation change coming into effect for next season for powertrain and durability. So those are the two departments that we're going to have to adapt parts for. We haven't actually got that many powertrain parts on the car, because our engine is just still really good even with only a few parts. So I can actually adapt all my engine parts, all my powertrain parts, right now, so that's really good. I don't quite have enough to adapt any of the durability yet, but we will do that a bit later on. Looking at R&D, and as you can see, Mercedes and Aston Martin are actually caught right up to Ferrari now, and Red Bull have actually dropped down a little bit closer to us, so that's interesting that Red Bull are kind of falling down the order a little bit. We're also going to have to take a new turbocharger here, so it's going to be a 10 place grid penalty. Now I thought it was going to be 15 because I thought it would have been like 10 and 5 or maybe even 10 and 10 for the components, but I'm guessing it's only 5 and 5, so maybe I'm just getting things wrong there. I thought it was a 10 place grid penalty for like the first extra allocation you took, and then 5 for everyone after that, and I thought that these were both like first allocations, but they must be second allocations, or the game's just glitching a little bit. Anyway, whatever the case is, we've got a 10 place grid penalty for the race. So Q1 here, and it went okay. I believe it was my first lap time that was my quickest. Didn't go quicker on my second, which means we're actually P11 and P12 with my teammate there. So not as quick as I was hoping. Big surprise out in Q1 is Oscar Piastri, P21 on the back row of the grid. So I don't know what happened with Piastri there, but just not finding the time in that McLaren. So very unfortunate for him. The rest of the drivers out in Q1 though were kind of your expected drivers and teams. Q2 comes around, and yeah, I was struggling a little bit on this track. Throughout the whole track, to be honest, just didn't feel particularly great. I didn't feel like the pace was that good. The car just didn't feel that stuck to the road. The curbs here especially are really bad, I found. I don't know if it's because maybe I'm running the car quite low down or what, but just if you run over almost any curb, the car pretty much bottoms out and tries to spin round. We only just get through to Q3, P10 in Q2, so that is right on the cusp there. Doohan's P14, so yeah, not the best looking for this, and especially since we're going to have a 10 place grid penalty. I was hoping to be, you know, a bit higher up the grid in qualifying so that our grid penalty wouldn't push us too far down the grid, but it's looking like we're going to be towards the back end of the top 10 here anyway, and then that 10 place grid penalty could mean that we're pretty much going to be at the back for the race. So we'll have to see how that goes. On to my Q3 lap time now, and we had a decent first few corners there as we head into the next braking zone. This first part of the track I'm pretty decent at. It's kind of from here onwards, that corner there I was really struggling with, and this one here, for some reason I don't always get it right. Get it decent on this lap. Into the S's section here, this section I really struggled with, because this one here on the right, if you ride that curb too much, the car bottoms out and you'll pretty much just go straight or you'll spin. And then round here, it is one of the most tricky S's sections. I've said in previous races that, you know, S's sections like in Silverstone, like at Circuit of the Americas, tracks like that, I'm actually doing better in those sections on this game compared to previous games. Here, I probably still am doing better than I have in previous games, but this is an SS section that I just really do struggle with quite a lot. And in the end, it's only P10 for us. We can't go any higher than P10, which means that it's going to be at best P20 on the grid for us tomorrow, or at worst I guess, depending on other grid penalties. Hamilton gets pole position here for a Mercedes 1-2, so Mercedes looking good here in Mexico, but let's get into the race.
Back in the 60s, Mexico City would host the season-ending race, a party of motor racing. Well, we might not host the finale now, but Mexico hosts a party nonetheless. So welcome to the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez for the Mexico City Grand Prix. We're a long way above sea level here in Mexico today, which could pose some cooling issues for the cars as they make their way around this 2.6-mile lap. 17 corners with top speeds in excess of 220 miles per hour, and watch out for potential overtaking into turns 1 and 4. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. George Russell will begin today's event in pole position, and it's Charles Leclerc in P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, Sainz, Norris, Ocon, Gasly, Hamilton, Bottas, Perez, Stroll, Tsunoda, Albon, Sargent, Joe, Davies, Oscar Piastri, Hulkenberg, Doohan, Magnussen, and Nick de Vries. With preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track. And joining me once again in the commentary box today is, of course, former World Endurance Champion Anthony Davidson. Should we kick off our conversation with George Russell?
Well, it was a really impressive lap in qualifying to get pole position, but are they going to be able to hold on to the lead into the first corner with so many quick starters around them? I'm also looking forward to seeing the different strategies in play today. Those who are starting on the red marked soft tyre are going to have a little bit more grip early on, but they have to make it count before that degradation starts to set in.
Alright, so it's actually P17 on the grid for us, as a lot of other drivers have taken grid penalties, including pole sitter Lewis Hamilton, who will start down in P9. So it's George Russell and Charles Leclerc on the front row. We get underway here, a few cars very slow ahead of us. Tsunoda and I think that was Lance Stroll, quite slow off the start, so we've made a couple of positions already, but now we're side by side with Tsunoda as we go down into turn 1. Lot of cars all over the place there. We've got the two Williams ahead of us. We're trying to stay ahead of Tsunoda here. We're still side by side with him, being a little bit cautious of the cars ahead because this is quite a tight, tricky section and we don't want to make contact in this first lap, as we have now managed to get past Tsunoda. He's going to get swallowed up by the cars behind. We have a little think about a move on Sargent ahead, but nothing really doing there. Don't want to take any big risks at the start of this race. So we're just going to continue going. You may have noticed as well, my teammate also took a grid penalty. So he started down in P20, so not a great place for him to start. It's been a decent start to the race for us though. We're up to P14 already, so already 3 positions gained as we head through the S's section here, and the two Williams ahead, quite slow. Albon actually seems really slow, to be honest. I actually have a little look at the inside of Sargent going into this corner. It's perhaps a little bit too crazy a thing there, as we actually get a big sideways moment out of that section as we head through the stadium section here at the end of the lap. Very tricky part of the lap, and one that I have been struggling with a lot on this game at this track as we head down the main straight for the second time onto lap number 2 and stay in P14. Looking at the start of the race once again, and I think we're having a look at Fernando Alonso here, who's had a great start. He's hooked up behind Charles Leclerc, who's managed to get into the lead, and is actually having a go at Leclerc for the lead of the race into turn 1 here. It's Leclerc versus Alonso. Alonso hasn't even had a podium in the Aston Martin this season, believe it or not, so he would love at least a podium, but he's actually going for the race win here and the lead, but he can't quite get past Leclerc, but he has gotten up to P2. Ahead of George Russell, who's dropped down to, I think, P3 off pole position. We find ourselves behind the two Williams, who are ridiculously slow, especially Albon. He really must have an issue here. So we're going to have a look, dive to the inside of Sargent, who's stuck behind his teammate, bounce over the curbs a little bit there, because we don't want to get stuck behind these guys for too long, because especially through that S's section, they are ridiculously slow. Now Alex Albon, the car ahead of us, and I believe, no, we don't, oh no, we do have DRS, available now as we head down the main straight with the DRS open, but look how quick these guys are. For some reason we are really not that quick, even with DRS and ERS. That Albon is still managing to stay ahead. We go for the move around the outside. Sargent was all over the back of us there as well, but we have managed to get past both the Williams drivers, but that was a bit more difficult than I was hoping. Really did not seem to have the engine performance and the power down the straight there, so that's a little bit strange. Maybe I'm running a bit more wing, because I did seem pretty quick through some of the corners, especially compared to the Williams, but down the straight just didn't have the speed. So perhaps we are going for a higher downforce setup than the cars around us. Max Verstappen has now made a move on Alonso. Unfortunately, Alonso could not quite stay there with Leclerc, and he's now been overtaken by Verstappen for P2, but Alonso still sits in P3 in the podium positions. Just behind these two, well, those two is these two, Pierre Gasly and Lando Norris, currently sitting 4th and 5th. Great positions for the Alpine and McLaren drivers. Gasly just getting past Norris there for P4. Alonso, though, is fighting back at Verstappen once again as he's trying to go round the outside of turn 1. It's the inside for turn 2, outside again for turn 3. So Alonso really wants a podium here, and of course he would much prefer a P2 finish. He gets ahead of Verstappen, and now Verstappen's coming under fire from Pierre Gasly, who's looking to get his first podium of this season as they go side by side here. This has not been good for Verstappen. He's gone from P2 to fighting now for P4. Well, for P3, I guess, almost dropping to P4, but he does manage to stay ahead of Pierre Gasly. We continue through the S's section here, but there's a big sideways moment, and we've spun the car around. We've almost gone backwards into the wall. We just I think we clipped the curb a little bit, lost all grip, and have spun out, and that is going to screw our race over massively as many cars go past us. There's Albon. We're back behind the Williams once again. De Vries there as well, as we're trying to fight with is that Magnussen, I believe, in the Haas. It's one of the Haas's anyway, but he ends up going past us. We look at this from a replay camera here, so we head into the S's section around this left hand corner, just a little bit too much curb, spins us around, I then overcorrect, and we spin around into the kind of, what do you call it, the lay-by zone, I don't know, the marshal kind of zone, and then just keep it out of the wall. You can see now here though, once we catch back up to Albon, how much quicker we are through the corners here, and I don't know if it's just because the Williams is struggling on pace, or if it's because Albon's got an issue, because he's fallen way behind his teammate Logan Sargent. So I think that maybe Albon's car has an issue, but we do manage to just about get past him. Whether it is a setup thing or not, I really do not know. We head into the pits a lap or so, or quite a few laps early actually. We were going to go soft to medium, but we're going to go soft to hard, because after that spin, my rear tyres were pretty much shot. They were they overheated, they were too hot, they were just not grippy anymore, and I wanted to get into some clean air after being stuck behind those cars. So we've put on the hard compound tyres, which I'm hoping will get us to the end of the race. So we'll see how that goes. Alonso still pressurising Verstappen here, and Verstappen has spun. He's spun as well, this time through turn 1, and that is terrible for Max Verstappen in this race. He needs a good result here to stay in the Drivers' Championship, and that spin may just have done it for him. That may have put him out of contention for the championship. So big stuff at the top of the championship there. Lando Norris now, with Verstappen spinning out, is sitting in P3, but Pierre Gasly wants that P3. It's looking like we could have two different drivers, two new drivers for the season, get podiums here, because of course Alonso hasn't had a podium in this career mode so far. Norris and Gasly haven't had podiums either, so it's looking like we could have one, maybe two drivers on the podium that haven't been on the podium yet so far. Gasly gets up ahead of Norris. We're trying to overtake Albon for, I think, the third time, and we're only like halfway into the race. It's ridiculous how many times we've tried to get past this car, but look how slow he is. On the straights he's alright, but through the corners he's just really slow, so I don't know if maybe he has a bit of damage, if he's got some kind of other issue, because usually when you see AI have issues, it's like a power issue. They're not quick down the straights. Albon's perfectly quick down the straights, but he just doesn't have any cornering speed whatsoever, so not sure what that is about. Now though, I think Pierre Gasly came into the pits. That left Norris vulnerable to George Russell, who's actually managed to now get up into that podium position. So maybe McLaren and Alpine will not be getting on the podium here. Mercedes and George Russell will be getting that position instead. As we continue on here, and it's actually my teammate now behind me. He's come into the pits, and I'm just going to let him go down the back straight. There's no point fighting him. He's quicker than us. He's on fresher, medium compound tyres. We're going to let him go. I'm hoping that maybe we can stick with him and get DRS, but that doesn't work. He just buggers off up ahead, and now we're under fire from Piastri, who once again, we don't have the ERS. We're in single-digit ERS numbers, and we just have to let Piastri go. And this is really kind of falling apart for us here, as around the final corner we are really struggling on, well, just in general now. The rear tires just are really burning up, even with these newer hard compound tires. Hulkenberg is now past us as well. We're just falling down the order, but we are on a very different strategy to everybody else here, and it's a strategy that I don't know if it's going to work or not, so we'll have to wait and see. Norris managed to get back past Russell once again. Not sure if it was in the pits or in actually on track, but Russell's trying to now get back past Norris once again as they go side by side. Gasly, is that Gasly? I think that was Gasly. Is actually ahead of both of these guys, so he now has that effective P3. So I'm not sure what happened with these guys. Gasly must have got the undercut done on them, but Russell is now past Norris and will want to be chasing down Gasly for the podium, but it is heartbreak for the home hero Sergio Perez. It kind of was just running in pretty much nowhere, not doing anything spectacular in this race, but he's got an engine failure in his home Grand Prix. Perez cannot catch a break at the Mexican Grand Prix in my career mode games. Like, I think it was F1 2021, every time we came here, Perez either crashed or had a mechanical failure. And seems to be no different in F1 23. We're now getting overtaken by Magnussen, so we managed to stay with Hulkenberg and Piastri for a little bit, but then yeah, Magnussen's now caught up to us. We are now, though, I think, coming into the window with the hard compound tyres, because we've managed to stick with Magnussen and are actually kind of going for him into turn one. Now, I didn't really want to overtake him because I want him to pull us along with the DRS, but he's actually quite slow, Kevin Magnussen. It must just be now at the point where the hard tyres are a little bit better, and we're going to go for a move into this next corner, because I can tell we are slowly catching the cars ahead actually as well. So maybe this is where our pace is starting to come in, but it's not going to be easy because we don't have a lot of ERS to deploy. We just don't have a particularly good car in a straight line, and Magnussen once again flies past us into turn one, and he will then have the DRS for the next corner, but we keep with him. We're kind of getting held up by him through the corners, so once again down the main straight we're back behind him again. This time we're going to try and power past him as quickly as we can and use the double dose of DRS that we will get out of the chicane to try and catch up to Piastri, and sure enough, that is what we do. Lap 35 of 36, the second to last lap, the penultimate lap of the Mexican Grand Prix. We've now caught up to the back of Piastri. We're not going to be scoring points here, but let's see if we can get any higher up the order as we have DRS behind the Australian driver as we head into the chicane. But the engine has gone up in smoke on the penultimate lap of the race. It is a mechanical failure for us on the second to last lap. It's the second time that this has happened. I think it was Australia where we had a mechanical failure on the second to last lap. It's our third retirement of the season, our first in the second half of the season. Haven't had a retirement since I believe it was Canada, our last one. But that is it. We are out of the race. We weren't going to score points anyway, but it has been a dreadful day in Mexico for us. That's not been too good.
What a drive that was to take the win for Ferrari today. Tell me, Ant, how do you think they were able to deliver such an incredible result today?
I really feel the track layout combined with the track temperatures we saw today suited their car. These cars come alive when the tyres are just at the right temperature, and the driver did a great job managing that as well. They just look so comfortable out there. It's like anything, it always looks so easy when it all just clicks.
Ferrari are at it again. An excellent performance at today's Grand Prix, and they're certainly a team that know what they're doing out there.
And Charles Leclerc wins the Mexican Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso finally steps on the podium in F1 23. It's his first podium of this game and of this season. He comes home for second place though, so it's a good result from Alonso. And then George Russell manages to take that P3 from Pierre Gasly and Lando Norris. But it's a great result from those two to get, I believe, 4th and 5th. Awesome to see Alonso on the podium there. Just really cool. I think the Aston Martin, just the overalls look really, I don't know, they just really pop and look really nice. So that's very good. It's actually Sainz actually that ends up finishing ahead of Gasly and Norris. So good fight through for him. P12 for Doohan, no points unfortunately, but our car did not seem very good here anyway. And yeah, it's P21 for us. We're ahead of Perez, and we do technically still get classified since we retired on the second to last lap. But yeah, it is not good for us in the championship, and well, Leclerc extends his lead even further over George Russell. I believe it's now 40 points, and Verstappen is, I think, 67 points behind, which is now not enough to defend his title. So the title is now between Leclerc and Russell going into the final 2 rounds, and Leclerc definitely has one hand on that trophy now, so he could win it all in Brazil next time out with 1 round left to go. And Ferrari are also fairly far ahead in the constructors, and Aston Martin with our DNF for us and no points for Doohan and a podium for Alonso, Aston Martin are now ahead of us 4th in the championship. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.